Hey there guys, if you have ever wanted to know how to put in a nice and elaborate faux rockwork background for an aquarium or fish tank, in this video I'm going to be showing you how I put together the rockwork for this aquarium. So if that's something you're interested in seeing, you want to make sure you stick around because that's going to be coming up right after this. Hey there guys, this is Jack over at Hi Redbird, where I am tirelessly working to find new ways to make the keeping of exotic animals and pets more exciting, more affordable, and ultimately more enjoyable. And in today's video, I wanted to showcase for you guys how to do a fake rockwork background on a fish tank or an aquarium. Now, this is something very, very easy to do. The parts to put it together are relatively inexpensive because we're mainly using styrofoam and silicone. It is very, very lightweight as well. So this is something that you can put together with materials that you can all find probably at your local hardware store. It is a ton of fun to do, but it does take a good deal of time. Not only are you going to use a lot of time putting things in place, in the next video we're going to be showcasing how to paint that, and that can take a lot of time as well. But the main thing you're going to be waiting on is for things to dry. So in this portion, waiting for the silicone to fully cure, which for that silicone can take anywhere from a day up to 7 days, depending on how thick the silicone is when you apply it, how much air circulation is able to get in around it. So you want to make sure that you give adequate time for those things to dry. In the next video, as we're doing the painting, we're going to be waiting for every single layer to dry. So that's going to take a little bit of time. This isn't something that you can put together in just an afternoon, but it is something that can be very, very durable. I have some tanks with rockwork like this that have lasted for years without any kind of damage or anything like that. But again, just know this isn't something that you can get finished in an afternoon, but it is really, really enjoyable once it's fully done. And I am a proponent, I've said it before, I'll say it again, make your animal enclosures as aesthetically pleasing, as visually pleasing as possible. If you enjoy looking at it, you're going to be more likely to look at it. And the more that you're looking at it, the more likely you are to notice if there's anything going on with your animals, if there is an environmental stressor or anything like that that could be inhibiting their health or well-being. If there is something in the aquarium or the enclosure, if it's another type of animal, that you're going to want to address because it could exacerbate problems down the road. The more you're looking at your enclosures, the better it ultimately is. But let's go ahead and jump right into how we are going to put this together. But one thing I do want to point out, when you are going to be siliconing those pieces into your aquarium, you want to make sure that it is very, very clean. You want to go ahead and use either rubbing alcohol or alcohol wipes to go ahead and get a really good clean on your glass. Now, I have finished this rockwork in here, and as you can tell, it is absolutely covered in fingerprints. There's even a few silicone smudges at the bottom that I'm going to have to clean up later. But even fingerprints, that would be something you would want to go ahead and just clean up, because while it's not likely, there is a chance that that could inhibit your ability for this to hold together really, really well. And after the amount of work that we're going to put into this, I know you don't want, a piece of silicone to not be fully secured because you didn't clean up a couple of fingerprints. So I strongly recommend go ahead, just make sure before you get started that your glass is fully clean. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into how we're going to be putting this together. All right, guys, so building out a faux rockwork background for this aquarium is actually going to be pretty simple. The look that I'm trying to create is a stacked slate background, so that's going to be probably the easiest thing to accomplish. But you'll notice that I have already done a little bit of work. The first thing I installed was this background divider. Now, the reason I did that, I don't like to see the equipment inside an aquarium, and doing this method, I can actually hide all of that equipment. So I just put in a little bit of a barrier right here. So this filter fits in there perfectly. The intake for the filter fits inside there. There's an intake right here on the side. It was supposed to be on this side, but I glued it in backwards and decided, that'll work. Don't pretend like you've never done that. So what's going to happen, water in the aquarium can obviously flow in through this intake. There's a piece of fiberglass window screening. You want to make sure you're using something that's not going to degrade in the water, but that's siliconed in place onto that styrofoam. That should hold pretty well. So water can flow in there. It'll flow all the way down to the bottom of this reservoir area. Filter will pick it up, send it out. Obviously, the goal was for it to come in on this side so that it would have better circulation. But this filter is actually geared higher than this aquarium. This is a 20-gallon tall aquarium. This filter is geared for 20 to 40 gallons. So there should be plenty of water circulation. And in the event there's not, if this right here ends up being a little bit of a dead spot, I do actually have a plan that'll be one of the future videos to increase circulation in this area right here. But, so we have that. We have the heater that is going to be able to fit just inside there as well. Now, of course, I'm not going to try to make that stick to the glass because if there is not water in the tank, the suction cups do not stick as well. This is going to be a lot heavier versus if there's water in the tank, it's going to stick a little better. I don't want to run the risk of trying to do that and this falling because there's no water in there and then cracking the bottom of the aquarium, because then that is going to be a little bit of a headache for me. And then the final item, I do have a light. So this light can actually fit in right there perfectly. And there is a screw to secure it somewhere, but in setting things up for this video, I hid it. I like to hide things from myself. It makes things a lot more fun, a lot more interesting to do. So I will find that screw later on, but all of the equipment that I need to get started is going to fit right there. So building this out was the same way that I'm going to build most of the rockwork, so you just need a couple of things. The first item you're going to need is some polystyrene foam. This craft foam is what I am using. You can use styrofoam that you get from packaging, from equipment, from furniture is what a lot of people use. One thing you want to be wary of, you want to make sure that that styrofoam hasn't been stained or in contact with any chemicals you don't want to have inside your aquarium, because you can't use soap to clean the styrofoam because you don't want soap inside your aquarium. So make sure your styrofoam is coming from a safe source. Now you're also going to need some kind of silicone. I am going to be using a caulking gun and a tube of silicone. Now I'll tell you guys right now, I am using GE Silicone 1. There is a little bit of debate over silicone. What you want is 100% silicone. That'll make it aquarium safe once it cures. GE Silicone 1 is 100% silicone, but it doesn't say on the label that it is aquarium safe. And if you even ask GE themselves, they'll tell you we don't recommend this product for aquariums. There are other companies that do what they label as aquarium safe silicone. Now I know plenty of people who have used GE Silicone 1 for their aquariums without issue. I have used it for things like poison dart frogs, an axolotl tank, an African bullfrog tank, and the sump of a coral reef tank. Again, none of those with any issues. So I'm comfortable using it. If you are not comfortable using it, I recommend getting something that clearly says on the label 100% aquarium safe silicone. What you want to avoid with silicone, some of them, since they are made for bathroom usage, will have mold inhibitors. Those can gradually leach out into the water, toxifying your aquarium. You don't want that to happen. So especially if you see an aquarium that says, prevents mold, that's going to be one you want to avoid. Now, in recent years, the GE Silicone 1 has actually been a little bit difficult about that, because they now say, prevents mold for up to 7 years, which leaves you wondering, oh God, did they start adding a mold inhibitor to this? You read the fine print and you see that they're saying that because it's 100% silicone, it is naturally mold and mildew resistant. But again, that still puts you in the iffy territory of, oh, did they change the configuration of this? So again, I've used it before. I'm comfortable with it. I implore you guys to go ahead, do your research with regard to the silicone that you are going to use, because you just want to make sure that you are using something that is safe for this aquarium. Now, you're also going to need some Drylock masonry waterproofer. That's what I'm going to be using for this. Now, I have done, I believe it's now the old school method of using tile grout to paint the backdrop. That gets very, very heavy very quickly. Using the Drylock masonry waterproofer, it is much lighter. It applies much easier. It's awesome. That's really all I can say about it. Again, I've used it for an axolotl tank, poison dart frog tanks, multiple poison dart frog tanks. I've used it as the backdrop in fish tanks, in the African bullfrog tank. So it is one of my favorite things to use. Now, the way that it comes out of the can, it is white. So you are going to need some things to tint that. So you can use, here I have a couple of bags of cement tint. Now, I just use the cement tint powder because I don't make that many aquariums, and it comes in a reasonably large package. If you get either the powdered cement tint or the liquid cement tint, I've heard from some people that they have some difficulty, the liquid separating or breaking down over time. Those bags of cement tint are honestly probably in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 years old. I just keep them well sealed, and I trust that they are safe. I'm not worried about them breaking down or anything like that. But if you use the powdered tint with the Drylock masonry waterproofer, it can make that a little bit thicker, a little bit more difficult to apply. So another thing you can use just some 100% acrylic paint, just a little bit of that worked in to create the colors that you're going to be using for this. You are going to be needing some paint brushes. You're going to want a variety of paint brushes, and I'm going to be honest, you're going to want a variety of cheap or disposable paint brushes, because they will probably not survive to the end of this project. But at the end of this project, you're going to have a really awesome background, so who cares? So you're going to need that. Since you are going to be working with silicone, please, 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 please use gloves. Silicone will stick to your hands. Every single time that you tell yourself that nothing's going to go wrong this time, it does. So I actually started the bottom layer of Rockwork on this with just a small tube of silicone, which decided the back end of it was going to explode, and more of it ended up on my hands than ended up being used for this aquarium. So please, anytime you are using 100% silicone, just use gloves. It is very, very difficult to get off your hands, and you're kind of going to hate the fact that you didn't wear gloves if you decide not to. So yeah, that's really all there is to that. Now you're also going to want a broom, a dustpan, a small vacuum, something like that. And the reason for that, we are going to take these pieces of polystyrene and we are just going to break them up. Now we want to make sure that we keep at least one flat edge. Cutting these small strips of polystyrene, I just used a utility knife. As long as it's got a good sharp blade, it can cut through this. It will leave little bits of styrofoam, but it'll still give you a reasonably flat edge. So you take your small pieces, and what we're going to do is we're just going to break off little bits. The goal is to create a much more organic shape than what you initially had. So there you can see that's a much rougher shape, and we can use that then to go in. Now I'm going to tell you guys right now, don't get bogged down in making sure that your pieces look 100% natural or organic, because we are going to be applying several coats of our waterproofer, the masonry waterproofer, as those coats build up, they're going to dull out your edges. They'll round things out a little bit. So by adding a couple coats of this, you're going to make things look a little bit more natural. So all I'm going to do is take each of these pieces and I'm going to silicone. I do the back where it's going to be attaching to either this styrofoam baffle or to the glass, and I'm going to also do the underside where it's stacking on top of the other styrofoam. You want to do that to every single layer. You want to make sure that this is all pretty tight because remember, styrofoam floats. So if you don't have a good grip with the silicone, the entire thing can come up, and it does happen, and it is very, very annoying, and you are probably going to say some words that you shouldn't be saying around children. At least that was my experience. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to adjust the camera just to show you guys how I'm putting in this rockwork. My goal is to create something that starts wider at the base and then tapers up. Since I have this filter here, I want to make sure that I have enough room here, so I'm not going to go all the way up to the rim. I'm going to stop just at this lower level here. And since I said I do have a plan to add something extra on this side, I'm going to do the same thing. I just want to make sure that I have a little bit of room. But I should have plenty of styrofoam here to do all the way up. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into that. All right, guys. So like I said, when you are working with silicone, you should always wear gloves. So I'm going to load that silicone into a caulking gun. I'm going to use a small screwdriver just to puncture a very small hole into that internal foil. I want to make sure that I can maintain a steady, controlled stream with the silicone. Like I said, when you are working with silicone, there is a tendency for it to want to explode and get all over the place. So I just want everything with this to be as controlled as possible. Now I do have quite a few pieces of styrofoam already prepped. You want to make sure that you have all of your styrofoam prepped before you get started with this, because you don't want to run the risk of your styrofoam drying out. If it dries off at that tip, you can usually use a utility knife to cut off just the tiny little bit of dried out silicone, but sometimes it will dry all the way through. And every time you go to cut it, you're going to widen that nozzle more and more, so it's going to make it harder to control how much silicone is coming out. So again, just have as much styrofoam as you think you need ready for this project, and then prep a little bit more. Now, as you can see, I am dry fitting some of these pieces before I glue them into place. You're perfectly able to do that. You know, you can check and see if that piece will look good there. And there's a couple of options if you don't think it will. If it's too big, go ahead, feel free to break off a little piece of it. You could break off an inch or two just to get it so it fits in your space, or you could break it completely in half. If it is extending too far out, you can also just break off the ends of it, the part that's going to be facing you at the back of the tank. Now, as you can see, this is going to use quite a bit of styrofoam as you are doing this. One thing I will point out, I am trying to have a little bit of variety in the depth of that rockwork. I find in my experience that it looks a little bit better if there's just a little bit of variation, but you do want to be careful with that, especially towards the bottom of the tank. If you have more than about a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch maximum variation in pieces towards the bottom of the tank, what's going to happen is you're going to create some crevices and fissures that are very, very difficult for you to get into with a paintbrush in order to seal this and paint this to detail it later on, which is going to be our next step. So my recommendation is to keep that variation at the bottom of the rockwork a little bit more consistent, you know, a little bit of variation, but then as you get higher up in the tank, you're going to have more room that you can move your hand in, move a paintbrush in, be able to paint this, so you can create overhangs and other things like that as you get higher up in the tank. But again, as you can see, this is going to take quite a bit of silicone, styrofoam, work and time. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next part of the video, and you guys will be able to figure out just how this went. But let's go ahead and move on to the finished product. All right, guys, so as you can see, this is what I came up with as the finished structure of the rockwork. So like I told you guys earlier, I did try to keep that tapering, have it really wide at the base and increase as you get towards the top. Now on certain levels, you'll see it extends a little bit above, or yes, it extends a little bit past the layer that's below it. Again, the way that you maintain that looking natural is just think about what you would be able to get away with actual rock work. You could get a little bit of an extension, a couple of inches, as long as there was enough on top of it to hold it in place and weigh it down. If I went all the way up here, had a piece that went here that connected then to the outer edge, that probably would not look as natural. Now, one thing you'll notice is this top part, I did change the orientation of the rockwork because that's what I would do with natural slate. I would change pieces so that it looked a little bit different. Now, this gives me a couple things. It gives me a really easy way to completely obscure the intake for the filter from view. Now, of course, water can still flow in and around that rockwork, but you cannot see that at all. It's going to give me a lot of nice little crevices that I can put plants in as well, so I really like that. Now, to tie that in at the end, I'm going to take some small pieces and just sort of work them around in different places of the tank, kind of like I would do if I was doing this with actual rockwork, just to tie everything together. But of course, I am going to wait and do those pieces later. Now, the reason for that, if I took this piece and had it right there, then to try to go in with a paintbrush, it's going to be very, very difficult to get around that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait. I'll probably paint this piece by itself, and then I'll silicone it into place after I am fully done with painting this rockwork. But the base structure of the rockwork is in place. I'm pretty happy with it. And now that you guys can get a really good idea of what it's starting to look like, my question for you guys, what fish species do you think I'm going to put in here? If you have thoughts on what fish species you think would work really well in this aquarium, or you think you know what I'm going to put in here, go ahead, put a comment down in the comment section below. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this, go ahead, subscribe to the channel, because I'm putting out content with videos for animal care topics every single week. So hopefully there is a lot of useful information there for you guys. I do want to thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you again. All right, thanks. Bye.